Annexation must be stopped. Bernie Sanders addresses crowd at joint Tel Aviv rally. Somebody should get him to run for president. He seems like a perfect candidate for the Democrats this year. Bernie's Jewish and is speaking out against American-backed Israeli aggression against Palestine. Just goes to show he has moral character and integrity. It's a pleasant change from the institutionalized corruption typically exhibited by politicians. Most Israelis want a two-state solution. Unfortunately, the government made a pact with the right-wing parties to win the election who are not for a two-state solution. It's a shit show overall, politically, in Israel. Edit, RIP inbox LOL. Is this the mushroom place with all the wizards? Sure is disheartening when all the candidates drop out of the primary before your state has even held its elections. Almost feels as though your vote doesn't matter upside down face. Bernie is probably the one and only mainstream progressive candidate in American politics. He's the UG. I'm genuinely curious about how this is perceived domestically by Israelis/Palestinians. For one, outside America, is Bernie Sanders that well known of a politician, and if so, how is he/hose are his policies perceived? Second, while his being Jewish did not seem to play much in national politics in the US, does that carry more or a different weight in Israeli politics? Especially comparing his anti-expansion/settlement views with those of more evangelical Christian politicians who seem to be largely supporting of moves like recognizing Jerusalem as the Israeli capital and moving the US embassy. Feel free to sort by controversial. The plans to annex any parts of the West Bank must be stopped. The occupation must be ended and we must work together for a future of equality and dignity for all people in Israel and Palestine. Bernie Sanders. I love that he is still fighting the good fight. Keep it up. Thank you for caring for your country for as long as you have. Remind me again. Why do we put up with Israel taking land and killing Palestinians? Biden also said 3 weeks ago he was against annexing territory. Wow, what an anti-Semite. /S. Let me chip in here as an Israeli citizen who follows the Palestinian narratives closely and has dedicated some hundreds of hours to poring over history books and sources. There seems to be no plausible solution within the box of modern legalistic framework. Basically, we need new technology to organize communities, public institutions, and public discourse. There's not even a constitution. There's no recognition of what constitution is for. PLO has some half-baked https://en. Wikipedia, org/wiki/Palestinian_national_covenant, which is a proclamation of aspirations most of all, and the reality has been sliding from underneath it since before it was published. Israel has essentially built institutions that comprise the state, public schools, healthcare system, trade unions, the whole shebang, way before the Declaration of Independence. They've been at it for the best part of the 20th century. But there's no constitution, no consistent notion of citizenship, of rights and obligations, of common vision, nothing. It's a lively soup of varied and vibrant communities or a bloody mess of hurt and disenfranchisement, however you choose to look at it. I've banged my head against it. Come on, I like my neighbors even when they're nasty, and I certainly don't identify with being Israeli. I just live here. I feel the chauvinism seep into me when I spend too much time on one side of the fence. I watched much smarter and more privileged and organized people than me bang their head raw against these issues for generations, and they've made some headway, but it really feels like they're tackling an incorrectly posed problem with inadequate tools. I see some vague hope in people just acknowledging their prejudices, reaching for the common humanity in all of us, and treating their institutions and their whole worldview as something malleable and amenable to change. Approaches like Hanson's economic reasoning about politics http://www. Overcoming bias. com/2019/03/tug sideways. HTML. Give me hope that we may work around the bitter stalemate by taking opportunities to come together on small issues and building up goodwill and sense of security and agency that most of the people here lack. I am against annexation, but Israel recognizing Palestinian state is a very interesting step that could lead to an eventual end of the conflict. It would be nice if he was in the Senate for votes though. Free Palestine. Is there any place in the world where political discourse is civil? Such a strange place to be put in. Israel basically tries to act like a Western country that just wants to exist peacefully without having to fight for land, and yet they are slowly taking over land that they could have already won from their previous wars in the region. Feels like all this issue and drama around it proves is, if you go to war over a land dispute, you sure as shit better finish the job and absorb the entire country so that there can't be an indefinite period of squabbling. Some older Israelis must be extremely regretful of thinking their country was doing the right thing by letting Palestine keep any land at all after being overwhelmingly crushed along with their neighbors. Palestinians fight against Israel and they're called terrorists. When they put their weapons down like pro-Israel supporters say they should, they have their land taken. What choice do they have then? Israel knows whatever the Palestinians do, it's Israel who wins. Lots of respect for Bernie for saying this. A two-state solution is the best way to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Sanders a hope for Palestinian people of Reddit. Just a reminder, there are people paid by Israel to defend their state on online platforms, so I have no feelings on who would get what in the Israeli/Palestine stuff. But you've just gotta look at the maps for about 0.00000000003 seconds and it's obvious Israel is expanding beyond what they are supposed to get. Even the original UN, British, borders they've well exceeded. I think I read it's something like 800% expansion. That's a problem. Why oh why did you drop out the race, Bernie? Sad. It's unlikely that Netanyahu even wants annexation in the first place. He used it as a political tool and is trying to lay the ground for others to take the fall when it doesn't go through. Maybe he might make a symbolic annexation of something, but not 30%, though I doubt even that will happen. He's doing what he is for political reasons, not because he actually wants to. How would the world look like if we had him for president? I think it would be heading the good way. Apparently not licking Netanyahu's boots is considering anti-Semitic. So what if Bernie criticized Israel's and America's annexation plan? Who cares? There is a massive war coming and I hope I call it in time and manage to follow in Professor Hobsbawm's footsteps and leave peacefully before all of us start getting exterminated. Plus, what's all this commotion and discussion about peace/two-state? Israeli leadership has a very clear and clean one-sided plan and it doesn't include a future Palestinian state, and Palestinians are extremely weak and internally divided, so there is no one for Israel to negotiate with, especially not someone way weaker than you. So, in perspective, as long as Palestinians can't deter Israel from using its nuclear capabilities, deter IF fighter jets from raiding them, there won't be peace. And no, there is no Saladin coming. Palestinians are fucked and us Palestinian citizens of Israel are double fucked cause everyone hates us for whatever reason. LMAO, we are seen as traitors cause we have Israeli passports, even though most of us didn't serve the IDF. Like WTF do you want us to do, fight and get massacred? You should be here in the United States running for president. Bernie putting in a bid for SOS.